Hey guys, it's Tony here at mechmanalternators again, and we're having a huge windstorm here, so figured I'd take shelter in our conference room here. Got our new TV up, goes through all kinds of stuff there. Figured I'd give you a little something to look at besides me. No comment, I'm sure there will be, but anyway, you can check that out if I'm boring or just turn the sound off. Doesn't matter. But I do want to talk about things that that I interact with this week, especially, and most likely the others as well. So, what I wanted to talk about was what mechmanalternators does and does not do. What we do is make high output alternators. That's what we do. All applications are listed on mechman.com. Make, model, year, engine, pick out your color, pick out your amperage. Pretty cut and dry through there. If you don't see your application listed on there, it's 99 billion nines. We don't make it, or we have something you can retrofit on there. But that leads me into what I'm going to talk about. So what we do is we build alternators. So that's what we can concentrate on. When we make an alternator, we sell you the alternator, we sell you the tech support, and we sell you the knowledge to either take it to someone to get it installed or install it yourself. And troubleshooting. That's kind of where it all ends up. But what we don't do is we don't build your entire electrical system. We don't build your vehicle. We don't build your audio system. We don't troubleshoot your audio system. We don't troubleshoot your wheel bearing. We don't troubleshoot your windshield wiper motor not working. We don't do that. We can't. That's not what we do. Now, if you install her alternator and you have a problem, hey, I'm cranked it up, it's making a whining sound and it's not charging. Well, chances are you didn't read the directions and you didn't put your shorter belt on and you didn't hook up the yellow wire to a 12-volt switch source. 9 billion times out of 10, it's not a thing. That's the problem. Instructions are there. It's not packing material, it's instructions. You hook up a 12-volt switch source most likely to certain applications, and amazingly it starts working. And then about a month later, you complain about it not working, and it's squealing or whatnot, and the voltage is spiking and up and down. Well, you didn't replace the belt. That's what causes that. And it's calm to talk about that stuff because that's what we do. I hear it. I type it on emails. I hear it on other phone calls. All I gotta do is read the directions. But again, troubleshooting, there's also other little things. Some things can be unique, others are pretty cut and dry. I mean, it's an alternator, we've been in business forever. You pretty much have seen everything and heard of everything. You guys are challenging though. There's been some pretty good stuff I've heard that's pretty wild to even think. The best one is I was sent a video where the alternator was literally laying on the concrete floor with jumper cables on it, and I was told it was not turning on. Rewind that. The alternator is sitting on a concrete floor. The pulley's not turning, but you have power going to it. You have 12 volts at the power stud, and you're grounding it on the case with a set of jumper cables, and the pulley's not turning. And you're calling us, telling us the alternator doesn't work right out of the box. So that probably ranks up there as one of the king instances. You just have to troubleshoot that and move on. Kind of obvious how we fix that. But again, what we don't do is install everything in your system. If you have a sound coming from your speakers, the alternator doesn't cause that, it doesn't make that sound. It amplifies what is already there. So if you have a stock alternator and you're crammed your car with a bunch of stuff and threw an install together, and you put our alternator on it, well, it's only going to amplify the sounds that were already there. Bad grounds. I mean, that's again, 99% of it's bad grounds. You ground it to the unibody, or you zip tie it to a seatbelt buckle, or all kinds of stuff. You know, you can go on and on. I'm sure every company has their, you know, horror stories of installs. I mean, you see it all over the internet, you know, the power wire going through the A-pillar or whatever. So we can talk about that for days, but I mean, it's all on the internet. We all laugh at it till it's ours. So you got to own that stuff. If you install our alternator, you button it all up, do everything you said, you go in, you try to turn the car on and it doesn't do anything, that's not the alternator's fault. That's your fault. A car will start with no alternator on it at all. Like, it will literally be that alternator sitting on the floor, and you can go crank your car and it will turn on if everything besides the alternator is there. So on those, yeah, you left something unplugged. You left generally it's a MAF sensor in the intake tube. Most of the time those got to come off. You broke a plug. You moved something and you have a 15-year-old vehicle with plastic under the hood. You hit a little sensor and it broke that fuel pressure sensor. I mean, it could be anything. It could be anything. We don't know how attention to detail you are, and we weren't there when you installed it, so we weren't there. So if your windshield wipers don't work, that's not the alternator's fault. If your windshield washer fluid doesn't work, that's not our fault. If your ABS light comes on, that's not our fault. That's not an alternator's fault. It can't do that. Most of our applications will require a 12-volt switch source. Most. Some are plug and play. You simply plug the thing back in it, or the thing. Well, that's professional. You plug the electrical connector into the plug, and you put your shorter belt on it, and you go. Which, there you go. Some people don't do the shorter belt, so you'll get about a month out of it or so, maybe month and a half, and then it'll start losing voltage or power, whatever. Well, it's because the belt slipped and burned and there's no more traction on it. So you gotta get the shorter belt. Amazingly, that fixes everything, just like in our instructions state. So, but again, back to the whole alternator blame for everything. Yeah, it's the meme on the internet. It's, you know, it's probably the alternator. It's probably the alternator. It ranks up there with the sling blade. You know, it's out of gas. You know, ain't got no gas. But think logically on this. If the alternator can be sitting on the floor or in the box, and there's no alternator at all on the car will start. It may not run very well, or, you know, maybe there's some computer thing that tells it, but it will crank. But if you get in your vehicle after installing our alternator and you turn the key and it doesn't do anything, or it doesn't actually turn over, you did something wrong. It's a MAF sensor, a MAP sensor, fuel pressure, coolant sensor. All these computers have fail-safes in them to keep it from instances just like that. So it needs those sensors to start. Now, so you get it to start. Everything starts up, and then your battery light's on. Sometimes it's because you didn't connect the battery, believe it or not. That's an actual thing. Not connecting the battery. You connect it, but you leave a fuse out of it. Some of those fuse holders, you can't see the fuse, or, you know, you just up and forget it. And hell, I've done that. I mean, I've done that in amplifiers I've installed. The little blade fuse or whatever in the sides of, I've left it out, cussed the whole truck up and down, and then, you know, it's always that last link in the chain you check, and there's your fuse missing. So same thing for the underhood fuse. I've done that before too. It happens, but, you know, you really just have to go through your steps. Whatever you did to get that original alternator out, you need to go back through those steps. Exactly. Put your hands where your hands were. Look, if you see any wires, touch them a little bit. There's some vacuum hoses even. That rubber gets all brittle from old age, heat cycles. I mean, it could literally be anything. So if you're calling us, I will be glad to help you with the alternator. It's no big deal. I mean, it's a voltmeter. Before you crank the car up, you measure it. You should have around 12 and a half, 13 volts at the alternator when the car is not running, which is battery voltage. That tells us that you've actually connected the battery to it. Because if you test that alternator and there's 0 volts, you don't have a battery connected. There's no battery. Think logical. If there's no 12 volts at your alternator when nothing's running, then you don't have a battery connected. Some of you have runs to the back of the vehicle. There's fuses there. Did you replace the fuse? Did the fuse blow? So it's simple and you can laugh at it a little bit, but it's frustrating, I know. But you crank your vehicle up, it starts, 13 or 14 volts, 14 and a half, 15, depending on the application and temperature. The alternator is doing its job. It's making voltage. It's doing what it's supposed to do. So if it's making voltage, then you're pretty much good to go. Now, if you're driving it and you're killing it, it's pulling 200 amps, 300 amps, whatever, and you see your voltage spiking, well, 9 times out of 10, that's your belt. That's your belt slipping. What it'll do is it'll slip, and then it does a burnout like a drag car, and it gets the belt sticky, so it'll catch, and then it'll catch and come back, and it's the regulator trying to keep itself going. So that's where you'll get your 16 volt and then 14 volt, 16 and 15 and all over the place. Normal fluctuating is okay. 14.4, 14.6, 7, 8. It's perfectly fine. It's no big deal. A lot of you guys that want set voltage, I need it set at 14.6 volts. If it does 14.5 volts or 14.7 volts, your car's not going to blow up. Your battery's not going to blow up. Everything's going to be fine. Really. It really is. Because wasn't that what your stock alternator was kind of doing? Fluctuating a little bit? Probably. So keep that in mind. Just because the battery manufacturer says you must charge at 14.4 volts. That they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're giving you the best number for performance out of their battery. So what that means is if you charge it a couple tenths lower, a couple tenths above, you're going to shorten battery life, but by how much? 10 minutes? 5? I mean, where do you draw the line here? So there's no such thing as set voltage. You can get a resting voltage, which is temperature based. All regulators are temperature based. You'll always have a little bit of fluctuation. And who's to say your voltmeter is accurate? Who's to say your car meter is actually accurate? You're checking voltage at the alternator, or are you checking voltage at the back? So don't lose sleep over 0.2 of a volt. It's gonna be okay. Car audio is fun. Electronics is fun. It's really easy. An alternator only needs to be bolted into a vehicle. I have to say that. It has to have the right tension on the belt, and depending on the amperage, it needs the properly sized power and ground wire. Power wire from the threaded stud of the alternator to the closest battery in the vehicle. Ground. You don't have to have a ground to make those things work. They'll work, but they work better. We're doing what the battery guys do. We're setting you up for success. If you ground that alternator, power wire to the closest battery, ground wire from the alternator to the closest battery negative post, that is the best install you can get, bar none. Yep, you can ground it to the shock tower frame, a bolt or engine, or not even put one in at all. But we're giving you the best case scenario. You're buying, look at that. You're buying that badass alternator up there. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of power. How much is a 3-foot section of ground cable? You know, think about that. You got to let this thing work for you. Let it do its thing. But we set you up that way. So if you get those things out of the way, the belt, 12-volt switch source, power and ground wire, and a good battery. We don't sell batteries, but you need a good battery. Any battery, just as long as it's good. 12.5 or so volts resting. That's really it. That's all you need. If you have any other problems, retrace your steps. You could have a connector. I've had that happen, a bulkhead on the connector. Someone was doing their big 3-up kit, wire kit, and they had to disconnect one of the main bulkhead wiring harnesses from the firewall so they could route the wire wherever they wanted with some loom or whatever the hell it was. But when they connected it back, they didn't have the connector in there exactly correct. It was a little crooked. And the only way I was called everything in the book, everything belittled, told everything I did sucked for an entire week. And I just kept going through it and going through it. And I didn't like it, but he bought our alternator. And he has tech support on that. 2 years minimum. That's my job to fix it. All I can do is ask them. And the only way I did it was... Sorry. The only way I was able to fix it was I asked him to video up close the entire engine bay. And I only happened to see 2 lines on the connector that weren't really parallel. And I asked him to look at that connector. And sure enough, that connector wasn't plugged in all the way. He connected the connector, started right up, it did just fine. I never got an apology. I never got a thank you. All I got was, it starts. That's it. So think about that next time you're, trying to ask us for information. We can only do what we can do. I will always go above and beyond to do what I can. But if I can't do something, I'll just flat out tell you I can't. Or if I don't recommend something, I'll tell you I don't recommend it. That's my job as a professional in this industry. When I go to car audio stuff, I listen to professional car audio people. I mean, I don't know what subwoofer dampening was or amplifier dampening. They told me. I was educated. I researched it. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. So... And again, guys, this one went a little longer. This is 20 minutes. This wasn't a complain fest or anything. This was just to help you guys understand that the alternator can't be blamed for everything, although it's super duper easy. It's endless. The memes and hilarious. It's all fun and games until it happens to you, and it's not funny. It's frustrating, very frustrating. If you have a flat tire, you know which tire's flat, but if you have an electrical problem, it sucks. You just got to start over from the beginning and just go through it and keep a level head. And, sometimes a second set of eyes or ears or whatever, it helps. So keep that in mind, and hopefully you stuck with me. If you didn't, I'm sorry, but I at least wanted to have a video where I can point people, everybody has these problems. Everybody. Nobody has installed something every single time and it worked just absolutely perfect. There's always some little thing in there. So, but just hang in there with us, guys. We can help you with alternators, but for the life of me, I will never be able to diagnose your ABS light on your vehicle. I just won't. I don't do brakes. But other than that, guys, hopefully the video thing up there kept you entertained. That was what we used at SEMA this year. A little background action. So on that one, it's Friday here, and looks like a tornado's coming through. So we're getting a bunch of orders out. A lot of those went through. The medium blues are I still have 4 left, I think. Man, I've been killing those with dual bracket kits. Those have been really hot. So, I mean, you can get 2 medium blues with a dual bracket kit. Woo, man, super duper pop under the hood for a hell of a price. So, any issues, you can always call MechMan or email me, Tony, Tony, at mechman.com. And if I can't figure something out, I'll research it. And if that doesn't figure it out, I'll pass it on to Matt, the owner. Same thing. Sometimes it just takes a second set of eyes or ears or just research. It's not an ego thing. It's just a solving a problem thing. So, you have a good weekend, guys. And 20 minutes, that's pretty dang good. I didn't even lose my voice. See you guys. Bye.